One of the best ways to add depth, believability, and interest to a character is having that character change through time. Through the course of a story, a character may learn new skills, come to new realizations, or otherwise develop emotionally and psychologically. The changes that a character goes through throughout the course of the story are called the character arc, or just character development. Character arcs are usually centered around a central lie that the character starts out believing. This could be something that they've developed by their own choosing, it could be a result of their own personal circumstances, or it could be something that's deeply ingrained in their culture. The belief in this lie usually manifests as a flaw in the character, and the events of the story slowly show the character that the lie is in fact a lie, and forces them to confront their flaws and accept the truth. By rejecting the lie and accepting the truth, your character will have changed substantively in some way. Your character might overcome their flaws and deepest fears to achieve a goal that will dramatically improve their station in life, or they may fail at their attempts to change, be darkened by external corrupting forces or their own internal demons, fall from their previously happy station in life, and wind up either dead, insane, alone, or otherwise damned for all eternity. This video has gotten suddenly very bleak. Character arcs can be one of the most difficult things in writing to do well. You're incorporating a lot of deep emotional, spiritual, and psychological processing for a character, and pulling that off realistically can be a bit of a challenge. Even the most simple of character arcs are grounded in complex psychological principles and cultural norms. Capturing this kind of deep change to a person's psyche on the page can get very complicated. So to help alleviate that, here are some tips to write a good character arc. My hope is at the end of these tips, you will have changed from a person who knows nothing about character arcs to someone who knows something about them. Tip number 1, decide if you need a character arc at all. Not every story needs a character arc, and neither does every character need an arc. There are a lot of characters who don't grow or change in any way throughout their story. A lot of superhero stories, the older James Bond and the older Sherlock Holmes stories, are examples of stories without really any strong character arcs. We don't read these stories to see how the characters are growing and changing. This is sometimes referred to as a flat character arc, not to be confused with a flat character. The characters who don't go through arcs are sometimes described as iconic characters. I've also seen the term paragon used to describe these characters, although that term seems to have some negative baggage attached to it. So regardless, we read these stories not for the changes that the characters undergo, but instead to watch the characters solve the problems of the plot. These characters often have a strong competence in a given area, and it's fun just to watch them be competent. You'll notice in the examples I gave you earlier that a lot of the modern adaptations of those stories, like the modern Sherlock Holmes adaptations, tend to focus a bit more on character than their forebears did. I have this half-baked theory that the current popularity of the morally gray, anti-hero, grim-dark protagonist is partially because people are getting tired of iconic heroes and want stories where the heroes go through more deep personal change. As time goes on, people are just getting more interested in seeing flawed people as the central heroes of their stories. Part of what we like about these stories is seeing the flaws of the hero and how they overcome them. Although I don't think most grimdark readers are into that genre for the emotional epiphanies of the characters, so I could be wrong. Cat standing in front of my script, still standing in front of my script. Anyway, back on track. You don't need to have a character arc in your story, but understand that if you don't have one, it's going to change your story quite a bit. And you will need other things like a highly competent protagonist or a lot of action scenes in order to keep the readers interested. However, if you've decided that you do want to include a character arc, you need to decide what kind. Tip number 2, decide what kind of character arc you want. I already said that. I mentioned at the beginning that the change a character goes through doesn't need to be positive. They can have a positive character arc, or they can have a negative one. The former will obviously usually be a more happy story, while the latter is generally less uplifting. Negative arcs usually start with a character in a good situation, as they generally result in the character losing something valuable. They might start out as the king, having a successful career, a loving family, a vast amount of wealth, and you, the author, slowly remove those things until they end up dead, insane, alone, or otherwise damned for all eternity. I also already said that. Positive arcs, on the other, less gloomy hand, generally start with the character in a not-so-good situation. They don't have to be completely miserable, but they will still generally be lacking something, even if they don't realize it or don't want to believe it. Remember the lie from earlier. In both types of arc, your character will have a goal, and also flaws that they need to overcome. In a positive arc, they overcome those flaws and achieve the goal. In the negative arc, they generally don't overcome those flaws and either fail to achieve the goal or achieve the goal but suffer some kind of consequences that they didn't anticipate. Common thread between both types of arc is that the character has a central goal that they are pursuing and flaws that prevent them from achieving it, which ties nicely into the last point. Tip number 3, tie the arc into your character's motivations and into their flaws. You've heard me harp on character motivation before, provided you watched my earlier video on character motivation. You've also heard me tell you that goals are not the same thing as motivation, provided you watched the character goal video, which I think is where I said that. Goals are something concrete that the character can achieve. Once a goal is achieved, then it's done. Motivations, on the other hand, are the reasons that a character is pursuing a specific goal. These are usually more deeply rooted in who that character is, and motivations tend to persist even after a goal is accomplished. All of your main characters should have some underlying motivation, and whatever arcs you send them on should be tied directly to that motivation. When you have a character pursuing something that doesn't make sense for what you've established about that character, then your story is going to seem stilted. This is where you end up in a situation where you have a character that is just going through the motions of the plot for apparently no reason. Similarly, if the problems the character encounters during the course of their arc don't directly relate to their flaws, then you can run into similar problems. What is missing in this type of story is a solid connection between character arc, motivation, and the flaws of the character. Make sure you establish the underlying drive for that character, what they truly want to achieve in life. Make sure that the stakes for the character, if they don't change, are well established. And make sure that their flaws are on full display when they go to try and achieve the goal. Make sure that you establish what the character initially believes and the reasons that they can't keep this belief going. Remember the lie from earlier. Show their flaws, directly kicking them in the face when they try to overcome them, and show them working to get past their flaws, or not getting past them if you're writing that kind of story. All that to say, any arc you put a character on needs to be personal to that character and connected to who they are. There's a lot more that I could say about this topic. We have barely even scratched the surface, but this video is getting kind of long and I have other things I need to do with my life, so I'm going to end it here. If you want to watch more stuff like this, you can check out the rest of my writing advice videos and subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.